It Always Rains on Sunday is based on a book by Arthur LeBurn. LeBurn was a successful journalist, scriptwriter and novelist, and this was actually the first film to be based on one of his books. The last would be in 1972, the last to date, and that was the basis of Alfred Hitchcock's triumphant return to British cinema, Frenzy. Arthur LeBurn was an expert chronicler of the darker side of London life. It's no surprise when It Always Rains on Sunday plunges into the doom and gloom of the post-war East End. Rationing is still in force, petty crime is rampant, and deprivation is the norm. The film centres on one family, the Sandergate family. Indeed, they lived at the bottom of this road that we are now in. The man of the house, Edward Chapman, plays George. His wife is Rose, played by Googie Withers. They have a son, Alfie, and two teenage daughters from a previous marriage of George's. Vi and Doris make up the household. The film was directed by one of the greats of British cinema, Robert Hamer, and captured in beautiful black and white photography by the peerless Douglas Slocum. So it's no surprise we get the required atmosphere in explicit detail. We see the public spaces, the street markets, the outdoor boxing ring, the doss house, and the private, the tin bath in the kitchen, the broken window repaired by blackout cloth, the Anderson shelter in the garden. In the film, this is 26 Coronet Grove, Bethnal Green. But in fact, we are just off Chalk Farm Road in Clarence Way, so they didn't shoot it in the East End at all. Right at the bottom there is where they live, just this side of the railway bridge. And if you look over the railway bridge, you'll see a church. It's Holy Trinity Church. It was built in 1850. It used to sport a magnificent spire, but it was badly damaged during the war. And in the film, it appears in truncated form. And now, as you can see, it was never restored and has been removed entirely. The house you can see behind me is the one that stands in for the Sandergates' Bethnal Green home. The lamppost you can see there recurs at several points during the film. There's a great shot of it, or possibly a studio reproduction of it, when George is looking out of his bedroom window and espies his daughter Vi returning home early one morning after an illicit night on the town. The central story of It Always Rains on Sunday concerns an escaped Dartmoor convict, played by John McCallum, called Tommy Swan in the film. John McCallum, in fact, would become Googie Withers' real-life husband soon after. They got engaged while making this film. In terms of the film, Rose and Tommy had an affair in the past when she was a barmaid at the Two Compasses pub, which is a set, by the way, and he returns here hoping to get her assistance in his attempt to flee the country. Here we are at Holy Trinity Church. It's in that distinctive porch that Tommy Swan cowers before dashing off down this road, Hartland Road, to get to the garden of George and Rose, where he hides in their Anderson shelter. We're actually going to go in the opposite direction, across Clarence Way, into the other half of Hartland Road. While Rose tries to help Tommy out without her family's knowledge, not surprisingly, we get glimpses of the dramas surrounding other members of the family. Vi, George's headstrong daughter, played by the ultimately tragic Susan Shaw, stumbles into an affair with band leader and shop owner Maury Hyams, hoping to further her ambitions to become a singer. Indeed, as down this street, Hartland Road, we see her striding towards a phone box in order to phone Maury after having a row with Rose. Vi's wiser but more innocent sister, Doris, goes through temporary problems with her boyfriend after Maury's brother Lou makes a play for her. Lou's played by John Slater. At this time was actually recovering from a very serious plane crash in France, where a score of his fellow travellers are actually being killed. Despite this, he gives a wonderful performance as a successful criminal, running the local games arcade, beauty parlour in the West End, unloading stolen goods, fixing fights while eyeing up the girls. He's one of a wonderful array of East End criminals, spivs and wide boys depicted in the film. Not so good at Lou as their trade are a trio of petty crooks played by Jimmy Hanley, Alfie Bass and John Carroll. They look the part with their wide lapel coats, but haven't got Lou's wherewithal. They provide another important interleaved strand in the film as they try to unload a gross of children's roller skates, a pathetic haul from a disappointing robbery. Their need to do this, their embarrassment at unloading these goods, exacerbated by their need for money and of course the increased police presence due to the hunt for Tommy Swan. The trio finally try to unload their roller skates to the local fence, Mr. Neasley, played in suitably unctuous manner by John Sallow. And he lived just over here to my right. And this junction, in fact, with Hawley Road and Hartland Road, is where we see the flower store destroyed in a street crash. Behind me is where Mr. Neasley lived and worked. And it's through that window that he hypocritically rebukes young Alfie and his mate who are passing by, loudly playing their mouth organs and thus tainting the Sabbath.
You boys, stop desecrating the Sabbath like that.
It's up those steps the trio of crooks go to unload their roller skates to a distinctly unimpressed and sneering Neasley, whose stance will actually lead to his death at the resentful hand of one of the gang. Much of the bustling life of the East End was actually recreated at Ealing Studios, with the set scenes interspersed with second unit material shot mainly around Whitechapel and Petticoat Lane Market. The Doss House, searched by Detective Sergeant Fothergill, Jack Warner, was actually in Cecil Street, now long gone but used to run off the Mile End Road. The other principal location used in the film, the train shunting yards, where the finale takes place and John McCallum is finally captured. This was Temple Mills in Stratford, the old yards of the Great Eastern Railways, the wagon works they had there, soon to become part of the nationalised British Rail. Virtually no trace remains. It's been in the news recently because it formed the northernmost part of the Olympic Park during the 2012 Olympics.